Hello there, welcome back. I'm going to continue on my Werner Herzog season, which was going on for about a year, very slowly, but it seems to be picking up now. With Heart of Glass, which is one of my favourite Herzog films of all time. Even though it's a very obscure one, and it's one of those films that you know a lot of people might not like. It's Herzog going really Herzog, it's pure Herzog, it's pure stuff, where he's not really catering to the audience to the sense of, I'm going to spoon feed you all the information, you have to pay attention on your own. You have to really put the effort in with this one, simply because he's not using conventional narrative, but he's doing something a lot more different. So I've got this on the Werner Herzog collection for BFI, which has got all the Kinski stuff, all the other stuff he did with Bruno. You know, it's pretty much all the stuff up to the early 80s, really. And you've got Cobra Verde, which is the mid-80s with Kinski, but mainly it's the early part of his career. Because he had that period, stopped for a short time, came back, and we've done a lot more documentaries. So the documentaries started to come in the 80s, but this was the that era, really, this box set. So Heart of Glass is, it's taking the idea of, we are defined by what we know. Like human beings, we like to think of ourselves as people who know a lot of stuff, who know what's going on in the world, when we really don't. We have theories. That's all we have. We have theories. And we've always been proven wrong again and again and again. And because we used to think the world is flat. We used to think that the sun revolved around us, not us revolving the sun. We didn't realise all the stars were universes of other star systems just like ours. We developed so many theories that were completely wrong, but they created metaphors that actually became our myths over time. So it's about that sensation of what people believe and what people create in their own heads, what people create as realities, what people create as something that's, can give their lives meaning. Doesn't matter if it's right. I mean, who cares if it's right? If it gives your life meaning, there must be something to it. It's the kind of thing that's been brought up in this film. But it's not like brought up in a kind of traditional way where you'd have someone who's above it all, who can look down and say, see, all these people are wrong, I've got the right idea. All that smug, sanctimonious garbage you get in films that are basically saying, look, we're making this film, we know better than these idiots. No, this is like, you're in this world. You're in their world and you're in their belief system, and we're actually going to morph the narrative around their belief system rather than try to give you a way out. And then the interesting thing is, because Herzog does that, he actually takes away a lot of the kind of melodrama that you could possibly have in this situation, and all the kind of potential judgments you could have in this situation, and it actually just shows the situation from the point of view, which means the narrative is blocky. There are things that are happening, there are storytelling techniques going on, but it's not driving towards a big conclusion. It's not driving towards a conclusion that has any meaning towards anybody. Really, it's almost a dissolution of a society, and it's showing you how it happens, but it's not telling you this is exactly how it happens here, and here, these reasons. Like, it's the atmosphere of it, and to do the atmosphere, you have to throw away like having like narrative objectives. It's all about showing you the dissolution of into insanity of this whole community. So the reason it's called Heart of Glass is because the community was a poor community. It got rich because they had this person who could do this certain kind of glass making, which made the glass red. He never passed on his technique to anyone else. He didn't write it down, because that's probably his power in the community, actually owning it. And suddenly he died, so there was nothing written down that actually can be read and say, okay, this is how we do it. So all the the people who made the glass, there's other people who can make glass, but no one can make the red glass. The red glass is what it sells. The other glass is stuff they can sell at a lower price, but there's lots of glass makers all over the country. The red glass was a thing they could do. That was their thing. There was only one guy who could do it, and he didn't pass on his technique. And as this occurs, the film occurs just after his death, as the community starts to fall into insanity because the guy's dead. The lords are who got rich on this discovery have gone slowly insane over the years, which then they call it the curse of the red glass. Some of the characters, because everything has meaning, really, that's beyond any sort of reality. It's what their emotional meaning to it is, and because it's from a more very unscientific method. It's a method of what I believe could be affecting reality. Like what I believe could affect the changing of the seasons, which created the gods and all this other stuff that has affected mankind and has shaped mankind. And this is a film about how those beliefs are kind of shaped, but not by saying this happened, this happened. It's just like showing the characters and showing how they act, and it's like how communities create these beliefs within themselves to keep themselves going over time, and it becomes much more understandable why certain beliefs like God emerged, because you had characters who were trying to survive under difficult circumstances. They needed something outside themselves to actually feel that there was a reason for keep going. And so it's about that kind of sense of belief and sense of the madness of characters can create these like fantastical situations in their minds. And it's also like this is the kind of base of a lot of our like fairy stories. This kind of sense of the fear in individuals, because maybe you know the grim fairy tales. A lot of them were just basically myths that grew up in small villages that the Grimm brothers actually just wrote down. They didn't create them. They actually wrote down originated stories that people in different villages had created and talked about, and these were stories that everyone knew. So it's that sense of this is the kind of source where it came from. This kind of unscientific view of the world, and it's the idea of you've got characters going mad, but some guy who thinks he can see the future. But it could just be mad. And he says things that are going to happen, and creepily some of them do, but not always exactly how he says they are. And it's like, did he prod that into happening by saying these things? Or can he see the future? And it's always ambiguous, because the idea is basically, we're seeing it from the point of view of people, and people have very flawed perspectives, very emotional perspectives. It's not like the distant narrator. It's like people have attachments to certain things being true or untrue in any society, because that's where the power base comes from, and that's how things can be manipulated into believing stuff that obviously isn't true. So the film's about that sense of the creation of realities that might objectively be wrong, but it's like, how does that attach itself to different characters throughout this town, and how does that affect the society as it goes on, and how does that affect society as it collapses? Because their belief in this one thing, this glass, and it's obviously the guy who made the glass didn't pass it on because he thought it'd be useless to the community once if he passed it on. So it was a defence mechanism he had, probably. And it's all about all these systems that create a community that was thriving and is now collapsing. And the rich people who own the mill, their idea of how they spent their money was basically allowed them to fall into madness. And that's why people call it the red glass curse, is because the old guy who used to run the mill has gone mad. His son has shown signs of madness. And it's because they sit around all day, they don't have anything to do, and they slowly go mad. They go into themselves, because they don't have to go and do any work. And the other people in the community have to do the work for pittance, basically. And it's just this system where allows everybody to be what they are. Like the workers work and grumble. The the mad guy in the forest yaps a lot and says these prophecies, and the rich people just fall into themselves, and everyone around them just gets affected by their madness. You know, the madness of this rich family is almost like a red death floating through the town. Just this sense of madness and craziness, and this idea for society collapsed into its own madness. I mean, really, it's Twitter. I couldn't resist that joke. But as somebody who's seen Twitter a lot, is this craziness of humanity, of the kind of well-off in humanity slowly going mad on a public forum because there's nothing else to do, you know, and they're slowly, you're just seeing signs of increasing insanity from lots and lots of people. If you go on Twitter, that's why I avoid it generally. Like, I promote the videos on Twitter, and I check up on accounts of people who I follow, but that's about it, because it's like if you go in too deep, you're going to see just insanity. And it's something that's confused mankind forever. We always think of ourselves as smart, intelligent people. And this film is all about the kind of the craziness that evolves through the human soul, and we know more than we did before scientifically. But if you look at a lot of religious mania that's going on just now, we all fall back into the comfort of these old fantasies that give us comfort, even though we know they're not true, and it's something that's a sickness that floats through mankind, and we haven't got beyond it yet. And in this film, just feels very modern. It's like it's a psychological plague that's just floating through the world, and it just feels very now. But I'm sure it feels very now in the 70s. I'm sure it feels very now in the 80s. It's just mankind. It's just mankind's got this insanity within them. And this film's pure because it takes away all the explanations and just says, like, lets these people be. And you have the people commenting to each other about certain things, but it's just people being themselves, and through the different fantasies that this guy who tells all these tales of things that may come, he just says all these stories floating through the air, and it's affecting things, and the madness of the guys in charge affects things, and it creates this mood of disease, and so it's coming from the top, it's coming from the side, it's coming from everywhere. There's no escape. Eventually, as the film goes on, it just infects. It's always there because they're in this wet, cold area to start with. But as it goes on, it becomes something that just infects everything. And it's always been there, but it's like as things go wrong, the madness rises to the surface. So it's just wonderful. The film is just wonderful. It's a beautiful film. It's shot beautifully. It's a film where Herzog actually had a lot of people hypnotised to give him a different tone as they talked, as they did the scenes, just to give a different tone, a sense of otherworldliness, but it's also the way people are when there's something not quite right. It takes away the defences of modern landscape and modern objectivity that we've trained ourselves to, and it goes back to a purer form. But it's this pure form that jumps out whenever something goes wrong in society anyway. So it's a really wonderful technique, and also just there's lots of shots of cows, of the landscape. It's just beautiful, and it's just a sense of this rot that's floating through the society. And by the end, the young rich guy goes completely mad and burns down his own glass making facility, his own factory, which is the lifeblood of the community, and he's just completely gone. And he's getting them to throw the red glass into the water, hoping it'll go into the water, affect the water, and create more red glass. And everyone's going, "That's mad, that's insane." And just this sense of insanity flowing through the film. And I haven't even talked about the end yet. The end's amazing, where the crazy guy tells a story about the guys these monks trying to travel through the water to reach the end of the world and see if the earth is flat or not. And it's just like, objectively we know what the reality is, but But just the way the mood been built up so well by Herzog, you actually do believe it. They're going towards the end of the world. They're going to see if they're going to fall off the end of the world. When in reality, they're just going to go and starve to death. But, and all the birds are following them. And it's like, is it a sign of hope, or is it the birds just been hungry? There's just this wonderful sense of doom and mood to this film. So it's a beautiful film. It's wonderful. My only warning is, you may need some patience. It's only an hour and a half long. But the mood is so focused on certain things that if you're not in the mood for it, it's going to be a hard journey. But if you're in the mood for it, it's stunning. It's just one of those things. It's like it's ignoring of narrative constraints makes it beautiful, but also makes it difficult for some people to watch. I think it's one of Herzog's best films. It's wonderful. I'd highly recommend it. So go see it, please. It's really worth the effort. So that's me for now. I'll be back soon with another video.